We'll get started kind of slowly in case a couple other people join our Zoom call today. But before we get started and before we get going, I did want to just let you know that we are going to be recording the session today. So I am going to, actually, it looks like we're already recording. So thanks for getting that set up. But I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. Just know that this is being recorded so that you can refer back to it and share it as needed. But just keep that in mind. With that said, my name is Braxton Thornley. I work for UEN. My role with UEN is a technology trainer. So I am lucky enough to work with educators and district leaders throughout the state on implementing technology effectively in classrooms and at the district level. So it's really exciting to be with you today. And I'm looking forward to meeting all of you and learning a little bit more about you. And today is just day 1 of 6. So hopefully I'll see many of you again next week, and we might get others next week, or we might have fewer. But just bear in mind that all of our sessions will be recorded with the idea that they'll build on each other a little bit. So what I'd like to do to get started is I am going to just go ahead and provide you all with our agenda. And the agenda is one long Google Doc that has our agenda for all of our sessions. So you can see our agenda for today, but then you can also look ahead to maybe next week or the week after to see what we'll be talking about. Today, as you should be able to see in that Google Doc that is linked in the chat, we are mostly just focusing on the very, very basics of how to get started with Canvas. That's going to involve talking about how to navigate Canvas, how to adjust settings within Canvas. And then the bulk of our session today, we're actually going to spend some time talking about how to create a Canvas homepage inside of your course and how to utilize Canvas Commons. So we'll be talking about that. But as far as the agenda on this document goes, you can see that right now we're just starting out with welcome and introductions. I am going to highlight a couple of resources that UEN has available for you. And then we'll get into Canvas itself. And most of today's session is going to be sort of a demo format. And what I mean by that is I don't have slides prepared or anything like that, because what I want to do is I want to go into my Canvas account and build things along with you. So with that in mind, if you are someone who learns best by following along and tinkering and trying things out, please feel welcome to open up your Canvas account, and we'll talk more about those accounts in just a second. But please feel welcome to open that up and follow along that way. Or if you are someone who learns best, maybe by just like watching and listening and perhaps taking notes, feel free to do that as well. Whatever works best for you, please go ahead and do that today. But just know that I'm going to move at a speed that's meant to facilitate you kind of building and following along with me. Now, with that said, I do want to provide you with an opportunity to get to your Canvas account. So I am going to turn the time over to Alexandra. Do you go by Alex? I don't want to assume too much here. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I'm going to turn the time over to Alex to kind of guide you to that account. And then I'll take over again and we'll start stepping through some of the basics.
Awesome. So as part of Adult Ed, we do have our own Canvas instance. I know some of you are already familiar with this Canvas instance, but let me put in the chat the link. It's essentially adulted.instructure.com. So that's where we're going to begin. If you signed up, I've created a training sub account for all of us today. Each one of you should have a class that you've been invited to. That's just a blank class that you can follow along with. Chloe, and I don't think I have one for you. So if you wouldn't mind just putting in your full email address into the chat. Oh, actually, I can see it as your name. I can create a class for you right now. And you should be able to see that invite in just a few minutes. But if anyone else is not able to get in or have any issues with getting into our instance, just send a chat and I'm happy to work through that while Braxton's kind of going through his intro. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And with that in mind, I know that many of you are probably navigating there, trying to get signed in. And so, what we'll do during this time as people are signing in is this is where I'm going to take a moment to highlight some of UEN's resources. And you can sign in while I talk about a few of those, and then we'll come back together and troubleshoot. So if you are having a problem signing in, just hang tight for a minute. We'll help you out, or feel free to send us a message in the chat. We can help you that way. But while people are getting logged in today, I do want to highlight some of the resources that might be helpful to you through UEN. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen, but I also want to let you know that you have a link to UEN's website in the agenda. So if you want to access it there, you can do it that way. But in short, it's just uen.org. Now, as I pull up uen.org, this is just our homepage here. But the important thing for you is going to be this professional development tab across the top. And there are a couple of things in this professional development tab that might be helpful to you. The first is that all of UEN's instructors are listed out right here. And I am right here at the top. So if you need to contact me for any reason, if you have follow-up questions after today, if you have concerns, or you maybe want a little bit more explanation on a certain concept, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer those questions. You can get all of my contact information just by clicking on my name here. Additionally, under professional development, you can see that we have a couple of education partners, one of them being Canvas. And on this Canvas page, we post a variety of resources on how to use Canvas effectively. So you'll see on the right-hand side, we have like a video playlist, we have a product blog. All of these resources are available to you if you run into questions. So just keep in mind that if you want to explore a little bit more, this is a good place to do that. Um, and then additionally, we have a couple other resources that may be helpful for you. We produce bi-weekly videos that highlight different technology tools. We have a newsletter, things like that. So you can explore those resources if you'd like. But the main thing that I wanted to point out today was, first off, you can contact me right here. We have some Canvas resources right here. And actually, the last thing that I almost forgot to mention is that we also offer free technology courses to any educators in the state. So if you are interested in learning more about Canvas, if you want to go into more depth, we have some free online self-paced Canvas courses that you can enroll in. All you need to do is click on technology courses, and then we have 4 different Canvas courses with a couple more in the making that you are more than welcome to opt into. And those courses bear USBE credit or SUU credit, depending on what you prefer. So, all of that said, I want to pause for just a minute to create a space for you to ask questions. And at this point, you can ask questions either about some of the professional development resources, or if you are having trouble signing in and you'd like to troubleshoot that a little bit, now's a great time to do that as well. So, what questions can I respond to before we move on? All right. Perfect. Well, I will assume that we're okay. In the meantime, if you run into any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. Or if that feels a little bit awkward, I know that I never enjoy doing that. You're also welcome to just put a comment in the chat. Just know that I have a couple of strengths. One of them is not monitoring Zoom chats. So I will see it eventually, but give me a minute. It might take me a second to refer back to that. As we move through the agenda, I'm also going to pause at basically the breaks that you see here on our agenda for today. So just keep in mind, I will pause at multiple points during our conversation today where you can ask some questions there. With all of that said, though, I do want to actually get into Canvas now. So I am going to sign into my instance of Canvas, and mine is going to look slightly different than yours because I am signing into the UEN instance. But again, this is essentially what you are going to see, is something similar to this. Now, there are going to be a couple of caveats here. First off, you probably won't see a UEN logo in your upper left-hand corner. And then additionally, you probably don't have as many courses as I do. I have a handful, but you will probably still see at least one tile where you have a course that you can dive into. Um, Now, before we start experimenting in that course and building things inside of that course, I want to give you just a quick tour of how you're going to navigate Canvas so that you're familiar with where to find everything. Now, the first element that I want to highlight is right when you sign in, you are looking at what's called your dashboard. And your dashboard is what is going to give you links to all of your different courses. So if you have several courses like I do, you'll see all of those courses laid out. But your dashboard is also where you are going to get a to-do list, some reminders for things coming up. And if you are a student, you can also view grades in your dashboard as well. Now, along the left-hand side of your screen right here, you have what's called the global navigation menu, and it's called the global navigation menu because essentially this menu controls your entire Canvas account. So if I scroll through here, you'll see that I have a little admin setting. You probably won't have that one. But then below that, you'll have your dashboard, which we're on right now. You'll have a list of courses that you can open up, and you can access your courses that way. You also have a Canvas calendar, and this is generated by Canvas automatically. So as you add things to your Canvas courses, those things will appear in your calendar. You have a Canvas inbox, which is essentially kind of like an email platform, and we'll look at that in more depth in just a little bit. Below that, you have history, which just essentially gives you a log of the actions that you've taken. Canvas Commons, which again, we'll talk about later on in the session today. And then at the bottom, you also have a little help toggle. So if you run into problems, if you have questions, you have a bunch of links for support in that help toggle. But then you'll also see that Canvas will post their updates that they implement down here as well. So you might get little notifications here. And that just indicates that Canvas has updated something, and they'll provide you more information about that if you open it up. Now, again, what we just looked at is called your global navigation menu. But if you go ahead and open up one of your courses, and many of you probably only have one, but if you go ahead and open that up, you'll be able to see probably a blank course. But the important thing here is that you'll get another menu. Now, just so that you understand what we're looking at here, I've opened up one of the courses that I am in charge of running through UEN. Now, this course is a fully developed course. It's an active course. It has students in it. So you can see that we have like pictures and information on this homepage here. And again, we'll talk about homepages in a moment. And then we also have some to-do items. It looks like I have a couple of students who have submitted assignments that I need to grade. And then we have some options over here on the right-hand side. For the time being, though, I want to just highlight this menu that's opened up on the left. And this is what's called your course navigation. So the important thing to remember within Canvas is that you can navigate inside of a course, which I'll do in just a moment. But then you can also navigate inside of Canvas. Navigating in Canvas, you use the global navigation. Navigating in the course, you use the course navigation. Now, inside of my course, I can open up different pages or menus. So I can see the course syllabus, announcements, modules, so on and so forth. And we'll talk about some of these items in a little bit more detail soon. But I just wanted to make sure that that dynamic was clear because today I am going to refer to our global navigation and our course navigation. And it's important to be able to keep those straight. So before we go too much further, I want to pause for just a moment. Are there any questions at this point that I can respond to or anything that I can clarify? All right, perfect. Well, it looks like the chat is still relatively empty. So I'll keep moving on. But at our next step, I wanted to highlight your account settings, your notification settings, and some of the controls that you have as an instructor, and also some of the controls that students have as well. So at this point, I am going to go into my account settings in the global navigation menu. And to do that, I'm just going to click on my little icon right here. Now I have a profile picture. You maybe don't have one on your account, but you should have a little icon that says account next to it. Once I click on that, I'm going to get this menu of options, and we're going to explore a couple of these today, but we'll just start out with notifications for the time being. So I'll go ahead and click on notifications. Now, once I open that up, you'll see that Canvas gives me a couple of informational pop-ups. The first one is they say account level notifications apply to all courses. Notifications for individual courses can be changed within each course and will override these notifications. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And then it also gives a timeline for when daily and weekly notifications are delivered. And again, we'll talk about that in more depth, but that's what you're seeing at the top. Now, below that, you will see this big list with different options. We are not going to go through this list item by item today, but I do want to highlight a couple of things and explain what you are looking at. So first off, you'll notice that I have this drop-down menu right here that says settings for account. What I can do is I can change my notifications for my entire account. So I can say, you know what, as a student or as a teacher, I want to receive notifications for these types of things, but I don't want to receive notifications for these types of things. Additionally, though, I also have the capability to adjust my notification settings for individual courses. So if you say, uh, if you're maybe teaching one course where you want to receive notifications when students submit an assignment late, you can turn that on for one course and turn it off for another course if you'd like to. And you can do that with this drop-down menu. Now, the vast majority of these notifications actually apply more to students than teachers. So just bear that in mind, is most of these won't really apply to you too much as a teacher, but some of them will. And the best way to find those is if you highlight over any of these, you'll get a little bit more of an explanation. You can see that on this one, we went up from 2 words to 4. So a lot more depth, I know, but you'll get a little bit more information. But the important thing about these is they will tell you if they apply to instructors. So this late grading notification setting, you can see it says instructor and admin only. If it doesn't have that little tag that says instructor and admin only, you should just assume that it primarily applies to students rather than instructors. Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see that I have 2 email addresses listed with my account. And then I have these little icons below those, and this is how you change how you get your notifications. So right now, this late grading one, for instance, has a little calendar on it, which indicates that I am going to get a weekly notification of all of the late assignment submissions that I have received in my course. So if Johnny is one of my students and the assignment is due on Tuesday and Johnny turns it in on Thursday, Sunday afternoon, I will receive a notification saying that Johnny turned that in. Now, if I want that notification a little bit sooner, I can click on this and choose one of these other options. So I can choose to be notified immediately, or I can choose to receive a daily summary of all of the late submissions, and I'll receive that every evening. But as you can see, I essentially have these 4 different options for all of my different notifications. You do also have the ability to add in extra email addresses, and we'll talk about how to do that in just a moment. And so you can change settings for each email address. You'll notice that with this late grading one, I am receiving weekly summaries to my braxton@uen.org email address. But then my other email address that's added, I'm not receiving any notifications at all. I don't want them going to that email. So just bear that in mind. You do have that level of control with your notifications. But like I mentioned before, this probably mostly applies to your students. And so if you have students who, for some reason, are upset by the number of notifications that they're receiving, they can go in here and toggle some of those off. Now, like I mentioned before, we're not going to go through all of these today, but this might be something for you to explore later, especially if you're using Canvas quite frequently. You might want to go in there and adjust the notifications based on your preferences. With that said, though, I do want to move into your account settings, which again are going to be in this little menu right here. So to get there, I clicked on my account, and then I'm going to click on settings. Once I click on that, I'm going to receive some of my account settings, and most of your settings are going to be okay by default. I wouldn't worry too much about adjusting these. But I do want to point out that you can add in email addresses over here on the right-hand side. And then you can even add different contact methods. Um, you can change the display name that people see for you. So if you go by some nickname, maybe, or a shortened version of your name, you can put that in here so that students see that as they're interacting with you. Um, you can change your language, time zone, things like that. And those probably don't apply too much to you. But then you also have some options for different features that you can turn on and off inside of Canvas. And again, most of those are probably okay by default. You probably don't need to worry too much about them. But if you are someone who is using any sort of assistive technology, and you maybe need those assistive technologies to work with Canvas a little bit better, those features are probably going to appear under these dropdowns. For instance, if you need closed captioning or you prefer closed captioning, you could turn that on automatically so that it always appears in any video that's played in Canvas, and so on and so forth. So again, if you need some of those assistive technologies, or if you just prefer some of those assistive technologies, that's a good place to look for them. Now, that is the really quick rundown of your notification and account settings. Are there any questions that I can respond to there before we start moving into the courses and how to create those courses?
Hey Braxton, if
Yeah.
a student needed those like assisted applications, they would go through the same process, right? But just in their own account settings.
Yes, and thank you for clarifying that. They will have pretty much the same options here. And one that I'll actually point out to you that has been really helpful to me as an instructor is this Microsoft Immersive Reader feature. Would you mind just checking to see if you have that feature available to you in your instance? Some people do, some people don't.
I have it, but I'm an admin, so I'm curious to see if maybe Jamie has it or Chris.
Do others have that? Okay.
I'm
I
seeing
have
it,
it.
but I'm
Oh,
also an
sorry.
admin with Alex.
What is it we're looking for, Alex?
Microsoft Immersive Reader under the features in your settings.
So I'm not an administrator on my Canvas account. I'm just a teacher, and I have access to the Microsoft Immersive Reader. It's one of my options.
Okay. I'm guessing that most of you probably have access to that. If you don't have access to that for some reason, feel free to email me and I can troubleshoot that with you. But the short version of what this is, and I'll actually go to one of my courses so that I can show you, is this is going to be helpful if you are working with multilingual students or students who have reading disabilities. Because what this will do is your students will be able to click on Immersive Reader in the upper right-hand corner of any page inside of your Canvas course. And once they do that, it's going to convert the text on the page to this like unformatted text that they can then have read aloud to them. But probably more important for you is if they go to this little book icon, they can also translate any content in your course to whatever language they need. So I can go to Danish and I can say, I just want to translate by word, and I can click on a word and it will give me a translation. But I can also translate the entire document at once and get the full translation, and it will actually read that translation to them in their native language as well. So if you do have students who need those assistive technologies, Immersive Reader is one of the more powerful ones, and that's one that I highly recommend for people who are working with a lot of multilingual students. All right, so Jamie, okay, good. You were able to activate it. Awesome. Okay, cool. So if any of you run into questions with Immersive Reader, feel free to just let me know. But at this point, I want to turn back to our agenda just briefly so that we can kind of reorient where we are. We've done all the welcome stuff. We've talked about settings. We've talked about how to navigate Canvas. Now I want to get more into the bulk of our content today, which are these three bottom portions. So we're going to start with communicating with students and parents, and for you, it's probably mostly students that you're communicating with. But then after we do that, we'll talk about how to build a homepage and how to use Canvas Commons. So back in Canvas, that's not the right tab. Back in Canvas, I'm going to go back to my dashboard. But the reason I'm going back there is because at this point, I want to simply highlight some of the communication options that you have inside of Canvas. One of those being the Canvas inbox that I touched on briefly before, but I now want to point out in a little bit more detail here. So if you open up your Canvas inbox, it is essentially going to look like an email platform. And I'm going to open that up here. And you can see that I have a list of messages that I've received over here. I can choose to filter those by the courses that I'm involved with. I can also navigate from my inbox to my unread messages, starred messages, so on and so forth. I can search for specific messages. And then I can compose messages as well. So if you want to message people through Canvas, you are entirely able to do that. The one important thing that I want to point out to you, though, is that by default, all of your messages that you receive through Canvas are going to get forwarded to the email that is associated with your Canvas account. And this is really important for people who are getting started with Canvas, because I talk to a lot of teachers and they're like, oh no, there is another email inbox that I have to check regularly. And you really don't. All of those messages will just get sent right to your email address. So don't let the Canvas inbox stress you out. It does exist. Students will probably use it every now and then, but those emails will just go right to your email inbox. Additionally, you can respond to those messages from your email inbox as well, and those will get forwarded through Canvas. So you don't even necessarily ever have to open up the inbox unless you really want to. So just bear that in mind. That does exist there, but it shouldn't be a stressor for you. Typically, the way I use this is if I need to message a student and for some reason I don't have their email address or it's hard to find, I can find it really quickly here because I can click on the course that that student is in, and then I can just type in their name here, and Canvas will automatically pull it up and I can write that message. And similar to instructors, Canvas will automatically forward that message to the student's email address as well. So they don't need to be checking their Canvas inbox either. That said, sometimes the email addresses associated with their Canvas accounts aren't necessarily the email addresses that they check frequently. And that's always something that you'll need to navigate. But that's a really quick rundown of the Canvas inbox. Yeah, Jamie, having it go to the email address is a lifesaver, or else we would all be in trouble, I think, because that is hard to remember to check. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out to you is that within your courses, you also have the ability to send announcements. So I'm going to go back to this course that I was in before. And then inside of that course, you'll see that in the course navigation, I have an announcements option. Now, my announcements option has a little I next to it that's crossed out, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. But as a teacher, I can click on announcements, and you can see that I haven't written any announcements for this course, but I can click on plus announcement. And then I am essentially just writing an email. So you can think of the topic title as the subject line for your email. Then I can type whatever message I need in the body of that email. And then if I wanted to, I can even include like images, multimedia, documents, things like that if I wanted to. But if not, I can just type the message that I want and then prepare it to send. Now, as I scroll down, I have the option to attach things, and then I can also choose the section of this course that I want to send it to. So if I'm teaching some sort of course that maybe has 4 sections, but I only want to send a message to the students in one of my sections, I have the power to do that, or I can send it to all of them. I can choose whether or not I allow people to comment on this, reply to comments, things like that, allow people to like my message. I can do all of that if I want to, but the important thing is right down here, I can set when I want this message to send and how long I want it to be available for before it disappears from students' view. So I can say, you know what, I want this message to send on Thursday. I want it to send at 10 p.m. And I only want it to be available for 2 days for some reason so that I can confuse all of my students. I can set whatever dates I want there. I can choose to not set a date. So if I just want to send it immediately and I want it to be available for the rest of time, I can do that. But once I'm all ready, I'll just hit publish. And then this will then be published under students announcements tab in their course. So again, they'll have the same tab and they can find it there. And they'll also get that as an email unless they have disabled notifications for announcements. So earlier we looked at those notification settings. One of those notification settings is that students can turn off forwarding for the announcements in their course. If they turn it off, obviously it's not going to go to their email. But by default, that remains on, and students should be receiving an email notification once you send out an announcement. Now, the reason that I highlight announcements is because it's a really quick way to send a message to all of your students at once. And additionally, and I don't know if this will necessarily apply to your teaching context, but additionally, if you have someone who is listed as an observer, which just means that they're not part of your course, but their account is attached to a student's account so that they can see how that student is doing. The best way to message those observers is through announcements as well. And again, I can go into more detail on that, but that's kind of the short version. Robin, I see your message. Can you send one message announcement to all courses, or do they need to be sent for each individual course? They do need to be sent through individual courses, unfortunately. Because announcements are embedded inside of that course navigation, they only apply to that one course. But thank you for clarifying that. That's an important point. What other points can I clarify about the inbox or the announcements at this point? All right, perfect. Well, we will keep pressing on then. And I'm going to go back to the dashboard. And on my dashboard, I'm actually going to open up a new course. And before I open up this course, I just want to give you a little context of what I'm opening up. I have this little course here that I use to teach different Canvas topics as I work with schools and as I work with teachers. And so this course isn't a fully developed course. It has no students in it. It just has like an amalgamation of random things inside of it. So that's what I'm opening up. If it looks kind of random and unorganized, that's because it is. But that's also a good place for me to demonstrate some of these things because we can move things around and test things out without necessarily adjusting things that students are going to see. So I'm going to open up this course now, and this is also a great time to start following along with me. So we are going to begin building together at this point. And what I want to focus on in today's session is building a homepage. Now, as I open up this course, you'll probably notice that this course looks different than my other course. This course has just like a list of items inside of it, right? And that list of items is kind of organized. These are modules, and we'll talk more about modules next week, but I just wanted to point out that that's what you're looking at. In my other course, if I go back just briefly, when I opened this up, you were looking at a page. I had a page that was designed with images and information and even buttons, and that's what this course was set up as. So today, I want to get started on building something kind of like this. Now, today we'll only get started on it. We won't go into too much depth, but I want to show you how you might start creating that. So I'm going to go back to my demo course. And in that demo course, I am going to find my tab inside of the course navigation that says pages. And you can go ahead and click on pages, and that's where I'm going to go as well. So I'm going to click on pages. And inside of pages, I have a page that pops up. This is just a sample page that I was showing people yesterday. But I'm going to click on view all pages, which you might not need to do because you probably don't have any pages. But if you don't have a plus page button, that's what you need to do first. So view all pages and then plus page. If that plus page button shows up by default, that's great. Just go ahead and click that to begin with. Now, once you click on that plus page button, you are going to see some options that look really similar to the announcements options that we were looking at before. At the very top, you can see that I can title this page. And for today's purposes, I'm just going to call it sample homepage. So sample homepage, and I'll say sample homepage 1. And that's what I'm going to call this page. And again, you can call your page whatever you'd like. I'd recommend it's probably a home page of some sort because that's what we're building today. But feel free to name that however you need to. Right below that, though, we have this main body area, which again, I touched on briefly with the announcements area. But I want to go into a little bit more depth here on the controls that you have. Now, this is called Canvas's rich content editor, and I'm going to refer to it that way throughout the upcoming week. So just know that whenever I say rich content editor, I just mean this box that allows me to edit content. Now, inside of here, I can basically navigate this page as if I'm creating a Word document or a Google Doc. I can click into this box and I can just go ahead and type. So I can say something like welcome. And just like I could in Microsoft Word or in Google Docs, I can adjust the formatting for that text. So I can make it bigger. I can bold it if I want to. I can go ahead and center it if I want to. And I can adjust that text however I need to, and I can put whatever text I want into it. Now, if you haven't already, I'm going to have you take a moment to just put some text in your page if you're following along. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It can just be welcome like mine. But go ahead and put some text in there, and I'll give you a minute or so to do that. All right, and then as you're adding that text, and maybe you already have, or maybe you're still working on it, but in either case, I want to point out some of the options that are available to you inside of this rich content editor. So we just kind of played with some of the text options, and you can see that I can italicize, underline, I can change the color of the text, I can highlight it, things like that. I can use subscripts. But additionally, you also have some multimedia options that are going to make your page a little bit more engaging. So I have the option to link within my page. And so what I can do is I can select my text, and then I can click on this link button, and I'm given two options. One is external link, one is course link. External link is if I want to link students to anything that exists outside of Canvas. Course link is if I want to link students to something else that's inside of my course. So maybe I have an assignment that I made in my course. I can link to that using my course link options. But for right now, let's just say that I want to link to these Canvas resources that I pointed out earlier. So I'm going to go to my URL. I'm going to copy that URL. Then I'll come back to my page, click on external link, and put that link right in this link box and hit done. And now you can see that it turns blue. And when students click on that, it's going to take them to this Canvas page here. So I have those linking options. Right next to the linking options, I also have the ability to add images. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on my page. And I'll just add an image just to demonstrate what this looks like. But again, once I click on it, I have three options, which are to upload an image, to use an image that I've already used in my course. So maybe if I've already uploaded an image, I can find it in my course uploads here so that I don't need to upload it again. Or I can find any image that I've used in all of Canvas. So maybe I haven't used it in this course, but I've used it in another course. I can find it through user images if I'd like to. Today, I'm just going to upload an image because that's typically how most people start. So I'll click on that. And you see that I have this rocket ship, or I have a URL. So if I have a URL to a file on my computer, I can add it here. And again, that's really important. It has to be a file on your computer. It can't be just like a link on the open internet. But typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to be on this computer tab, and I'm going to click on the little rocket ship. That's going to bring up my files. And I'll just say that I am going to use this picture here. I can select that, hit open. It will show me a preview of that picture. And then right below that, I have some options. Now, alt text may or may not be familiar to you, but all alt text is it's a tool that helps people who use screen readers. So if you are maybe working with a student who is blind or at least partially blind, they may be using a screen reader. And what a screen reader is it's a technology that essentially reads the comments or the content on websites to people who have some sort of vision disability or vision impairment. And so with that in mind, as they cannot view images in the same way that others might be able to, it's important that we describe what that image is. And so that's all alt text is. And I would just write Ruth Lake in the high Uintas. I'll say that. It doesn't need to be detailed, but that's what you'd put there. If the image is simply to make your page look better, it doesn't necessarily have any content attached to it, you don't really need to worry about the alt text option, but I would check this decorative image option because that lets screen readers know, hey, you don't need to worry about this picture. After that, you can choose to embed the image or display a link to the image. Usually we want to embed it. That's what puts it on the page. And then I can hit submit. And then you'll see that my picture loads for a second and then will appear on the page right below my text, wherever I happen to put it. Now, this picture is really, really big right now because it's a big file. But if I click on that picture, I can click on image options, and then I can adjust the size of that picture. So right now it's this custom size, but I could say I want it to be small, I want it to be medium, large, extra large, or I can adjust specifically how big I want it by using custom, and I want it to be this number of pixels by this number of pixels, or I can say, I just want it to take up 100% of the width of the page or 75% of the width of the page, whatever the case may be. Once I've edited that, I can hit done, and you'll see that my page adjusts a little bit as needed. Right next to the image options, I have multimedia options, and you can see that I can upload media. I can choose media that's already in my course. And then I can use media that I've used elsewhere on Canvas, just like with the images. The important option here, though, is not only can I upload, I can also record media. So if I click on this top option, I have the same rocket ship as before, but I also have this record feature, and built right into Canvas, you'll see that we have a recording option here, and I can record myself. I can turn my webcam off if I want and just record my mic. I could turn my mic off and only record my webcam, but I can just record right in Canvas, and that will post it right to the page as needed. So you have those media options too. Now, below or next to those media options, you also have the ability to upload documents. You have the ability to create little icons if you want for your page, and Canvas has that built in. If you are using Lucid or Lucid Charts, you can embed those right into your page if you'd like. And then you can also use various apps that are integrated into Canvas as well. If you click on your little plug icon, you probably won't have any apps listed right now because you haven't used any before. But if you click on View All, you'll have a big list of apps that you can choose from. And those apps will allow you to embed things directly onto your page. Usually the one that people use the most is Google Drive. And you want this Google Drive LTI 1.3. And what that allows you to do is, let's say that I have a Google Doc in my Google Drive that I want to appear on the page, and I want it to actually be the document on the page, not just a link to the document. I can choose this Google Drive option. It will pull up my Google Drive. I can click on that document, and then Canvas will put it right in the page for me. Beyond that, I have a couple more text editing options, so I can center things, I could use bullet points, I can indent things, I can add in tables, I can add in math equations, and then the final thing right here is just my embed options. So if I have an embed code to something, maybe a YouTube video, maybe a map, something like that, I can embed that here. And we'll talk more about all of those multimedia options another week. But those are the options that are available to you to start creating your page. Now, I want to pause for just a moment to give you some space to ask any questions that you may have. If you don't have questions, but you want to try something, you're welcome to do that. We're going to take just a minute or two here for you to poke around and explore, ask questions as needed. And then we'll talk about how to use this page once you've designed it. All right. Oh, interesting. Mary Kay, your icons don't include all of them that mine do. A couple of things may be happening. So I'll give you a couple of options on why that might appear that way for you. The first option is if you are on a smaller screen than I am, your options may look something like this. I'm going to shrink my screen down so you can kind of see. So you can see once I shrunk my screen a little bit, I actually now lost a few icons, but I have these 3 dots, and that's just to expand my options to more like this. So that's most likely what's happening for you. I would check to see if you have these 3 little dots. The other thing that might be happening is that some people haven't had like Lucid integrated yet. That's a fairly recent update. Other people don't have the same icon for embedding things. So you might have a couple of things that are different, but if it's mostly an issue of not having as many as me, it's probably a matter of your screen size, in which case you'll just need to click on those 3 dots. Okay, perfect. I'm glad that was it. Jamie, should we all have access to Lucid? Yes and no. The reason I say yes and no is because, like I mentioned before, that's a fairly recent update that it's been added in. And so your instance might not have it added in right here. That said, if it's not right here, it should be under your plug and your view all apps. So it might be in that location. Or if it's not there, send me an email and I can look into it a little bit more. Jamie, did you have a question for Alex?
I can see the Lucid icon on mine, but we can dig in to see if that's a whole state setting or if that's just an admin setting too.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, it's fairly recent, so it is possible that it just hasn't been rolled out to your instance of Canvas yet. It really should have been. I would be surprised if it hasn't, but that is a possibility, so that's something to keep in mind too. I tried to embed an internet link to access it. I have to highlight and say open in a new tab. How do I make it so that the student can just click on the link and it opens? Interesting. Okay. Okay, Jamie, I'm glad that you found that. Robin, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to that. So when you are using a link, I want to first off make sure that you went through the same process, and you probably did, but I'm just troubleshooting here. So when you added that link, I'm guessing that you highlighted some text and then you clicked on your link button, and actually mine's a little bit different. So I'm going to remove my link. So I'm guessing that you had your text, you clicked on the link button, you clicked on external link, and you put a link right in here. Is that correct, Robin? Okay, perfect. Once you do that, and again, I'm going to grab my link. It's going to appear like this. And when you highlight it, which I think you're speaking to as an instructor, or when I click on it, like nothing's really happening here. The reason why is because you're editing your page. And so actually, this is a nice segue into the next thing that I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to move away from your question from just a minute, but I promise I'm going to circle back to it. But what's most likely happening here is because we're editing pages right now, we're not getting the same level of interactivity as students might. And so what we actually need to do is save our page. Now, at the bottom here, you can see that I have a couple of options. Option number 1 is to cancel. If you press that, all of your work goes away forever. So be careful. Save and publish means that I'm going to save my page and students are going to be able to see it. Save means I want to save my progress, but this isn't ready for students to look at yet. So hide it from students. That's the dynamic that you're playing with those options. So again, if you want it available to students, you'll hit save and publish. If you don't, you'll just hit save. For right now, to demonstrate this, I'm going to hit save and publish. Oh, perfect. I'm glad it's working. Because once I click on save and publish, now I'm going to be interacting with it as if a student would. And so you can see once I hover over that, now I can click on it and it will open that page, which I'm guessing is what you just experienced. So that's part of the dynamic as well. I also want to highlight here that you are seeing this page sort of like a student would see it, but not completely, because you also have a view as student option in the upper right-hand corner. And this will show you exactly what a student will see. Now, the main thing that's going to change is your navigation menu on the left-hand side. And we'll talk more about your navigation menu next week. But if you ever want to test something as a student, you can always click on that view as student option. Now, we started this by talking about home pages and how to build a home page. You maybe have created like a very basic page at this point that maybe has some text, maybe an image, but I want you to now take that page and turn it into your home page. And there are a couple of steps involved with this. So you'll notice that if I click on home, I don't have that page as my home page. I still just have my big list of modules. There are two main things that I need to do in order to set that page as my home page. The first thing is I need to go back to my pages options here. So I'm going to click on pages, and you might just see your home page right there. If you don't see your home page right there, you're going to click on view all pages. Now my home page isn't right here right now. This is a different page. So I'm going to click on view all pages. And then once I do that, I have a list of all the pages that I've made in my course. The page that I just built with you was called sample homepage number 1, which is right here. Now I'm going to click these 3 dots that are on the right-hand side, and you'll see that one of my options is to use as front page. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that. What that tells Canvas is that I want to use this as my home page. Now, if you clicked on pages to begin with and your page pulled up by default, which it probably did, you can still access that same option by clicking on these 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner and clicking on set as home page. And you should be able to find that there. That is grayed out and I'm unable to click on it. Okay, if that is grayed out for you, then there's something else that needs to happen first, which means that we're going to go to our home tab right up here. So we'll go to home. And then on your home tab, on the right-hand side, you'll see that I have a couple of options, and we won't go into all of these options today, but we do need to use the choose homepage option. And when I click on this, I get a couple of options from my Canvas list. The first option is to have a course activity stream as my homepage, which means that when students access my page, they just get a list of announcements. The next option is to choose a page's front page, which is what we want. That's what we just built. So go ahead and click on that. Your other options you can see is you can list out your modules as your homepage, which is what my course looked like before. You could just have a big list of assignments as your homepage, or you can have the syllabus as your homepage. All of those are options to you, but for today, we'll do the page's front page. Once you click on that and hit save, if you were able to set your front page before, it should now show up as your homepage. If you were unable to set your homepage as your front page before, at this point, you can cycle back to pages. And then hopefully you should be able to go in and click on view all pages and set that as your front page. Robin, it sounds like your page's front page is still maybe grayed out. Are others experiencing the same problem where they can't set the front page?
So I was, and then I published my page, and I had the option to make it my home page.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that, Alex. I totally skipped over that. My apologies. That's an important step that I should have pointed out. If you did not publish your page, you cannot set it as your front page. And the reason why is because by not publishing it, you've essentially told Canvas, I do not want students to see this. But if you set it as your homepage, then obviously they'll see it. So Canvas won't let you to set it as the front page unless it is published. Alex, thank you for that. That is the step that I missed. So if you are in the same boat and you want to now publish your homepage so that you can set it as a front page, your option to publish is this little circle right here. If it's unpublished, it will have this slash mark, and you can just click on that. It will turn it green with a check mark, and then you should be able to set it as your homepage. Now, if you don't want it as your homepage yet, if you're still working on it, just keep in mind that as soon as you publish it, you should then be able to set it as your homepage. Hopefully that addressed the issue that you were running into. Other questions that I can respond to here. I know that we have 5 minutes left. I want to show you one more thing, and then anyone who wants to ask more questions, you're always welcome to stay on after the call. But I want to pause just briefly before I show you the last item today. All right, perfect. I'm going to show you one more thing, then we'll wrap things up. I'll tell you what we're going to focus on next week. And then, like I said, if you want to stay on afterwards and ask additional questions, you are more than welcome to do that. So last thing that I want to show you is what's called the Canvas Commons. Now you are going to access your Canvas Commons through your global navigation menu that's over here on the far left. And the Canvas Commons option is right here. It's second from the bottom for most people. Some people have it third from the bottom, but I'm guessing it's probably here for you. Now, once you click on this icon, it's going to pull up something that looks like this. And it might take a second to load because there's a lot going on in here, but you're essentially going to get this. Now, what the Canvas Commons is it is a repository of Canvas courses, assignments, quizzes, activities, pages of all sorts that you can use inside of your course. So if you are looking for something that has already been built by someone else who's very kind and generous and decided to share it with the world, this is where you would find it. Now, for instance, what I might do is I might go in here and look up Jamie's name. Here we go. Jamie, are you a kind and generous person that has shared things with the world? It looks like you are. Would it be? So Jamie has created a bunch of stuff, right? We have quizzes here, shopping for a credit card, reading an amortization schedule. Chris can attest to her generosity. I love that. So Jamie has all of these resources that have already been built, right? So I can look up Jamie, find her resources, and let's say that I want this resource in my course for shopping for a credit card. I can click on that resource, whatever it is, and I can preview it so I can read through and see what Jamie's built here if I'd like to. I can add it to my favorites to maybe save it for later. I can copy a link to this resource to send to my friends or my colleagues. But then importantly, I have this blue button. And if I click on this blue button, it's going to pull Jamie's quiz into my Canvas course so that I don't have to remake it. So if someone has already built something that's useful to you, you can just click on this blue import button and it's going to pull it right into your course. Now, again, you can probably search through here and you might be able to find some content that applies to you. Maybe you can't, depending on what you're teaching, but this is a great place to start if you are brand new to Canvas and you need some resources. So I would highly recommend looking at this. Again, we're going to talk about quizzes and assignments and a little bit more about sharing content through Commons and other means in some of our follow-up sessions. But I did want to point that out today in case you felt like exploring a little bit before you built your entire Canvas course from scratch all by yourself. And keep in mind that some people have shared quizzes and things like Jamie has, but other people have actually already shared entire courses. And so you could import an entire course and then just unpublish the things that you don't want. So keep that in mind as well. Like I said before, though, this is our first session out of 6. So what I want to do with our last couple of minutes is just highlight what we talked about today and some of the things that we'll talk about next time. So today we talked about how to navigate Canvas, how to access your settings and change some of those, how to communicate with students through the inbox and through announcements, how to start creating a homepage and set that as your homepage, and then also how to access and use Canvas Commons. Next week, we are going to talk more about content. So if you scroll down to session number 2, you'll see that we are going to spend a little bit of time just touching on those resources that I mentioned today. That's just as a refresher. We'll spend like 1 or 2 minutes on that. After that, though, the main things that we're going to talk about are how to make things accessible for students with various needs, and how to keep in mind people who are approaching our courses with different backgrounds or cultural backgrounds or even languages. So we'll start by framing our session that way. And then after we do that, we'll talk more about how to create pages that have media inside them. So we'll go into a little bit more depth on building pages. We'll talk about how to use modules. Again, I touched on modules today, but we'll go into more depth next time. And then we'll talk about all the module settings that are available to you so that you can guide students' learning process. And that's where we're headed next. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to stay on the call, or please feel free to send me an email. You can access my email through UEN's website. But additionally, my email address is just braxton@uen.org. Thank you all so much for being here. I look forward to seeing most of you next week. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to stay on the call. But at this point, we're going to go ahead and end the recording. And I hope that you have an excellent Wednesday if you don't have any questions for me.